Big news this weekend in China. Sacking of a top official, seizing more than 90 billion yuan worth of assets from this man, Zhao, who they've been investigating for quite a while. And they're calling it a breakdown of corrupt officials and a sacking of corrupt officials to end corruption in China, which is very hypocritical to me, because basically this guy Zhao, the reason why he was attacked and sacked and stripped of all of his wealth, him and 300 family members, is because he was allied with Bo Xilai, which was the ousted Chongqing head that had potential to be the next president of China. So Xi Jinping is, of course, finishing up going after his political enemies and cleaning house, so to speak. He had bonds, villas, cars, liquor, and, of course, gold bullion, which is the smartest move to be made. Now, how they got hold of all the assets around the world, have no idea, but they did a pretty thorough job of it. Now, why is it hypocritical again on another level? Because if we look at the former president, Hu Jintao, and the former officials in the Chinese CHICOM administration, you'll see that they're as dirty as any other official that's been sacked. In fact, probably dirtier. But have they been even investigated? No, they have not. This is where political alliance fall in China. Everyone is connected family-wise. Everyone in the central control of the party is corrupt. This is just facts. So they're congratulating themselves for cutting down on corruption, yet the corruption continues and will continue. There's no end to it. It's part of the culture, and that cannot be disputed. What else is going on? Well, First Lady Michelle Obama is visiting China this past week and met with Xi Jinping and his wife to do what else? Talk about education. Now, why would the First Lady be discussing educational matters with the First Family of China? Well, it's all basically a promotional stunt, and what they're really discussing has more to do with more student visas for Chinese students to come abroad to the United States, and that number will increase, and it'll also increase in other areas, Australia, Europe, and many other places. So you can be sure that if you're just a student that's starting out in college now, or if you have children that are going to be starting college or are in college right now, there's going to be greater competition in the workforce for jobs. And the Chinese students are aggressive, they're usually well educated, and will work for far less than the new graduates in your country. So, things bad in your country, the job conditions are terrible. In most places in the world, you see up to a 50% unemployment of newly graduated professionals. Well, you don't expect to see that number improve at all with so many Chinese given free reign and free access to markets and work visas and student visas. It's not going to get any better. So competition is fierce. You have to understand and address the issue and find out how you can be more competitive in a world with no borders. And of course, the big news earlier this month is the stabbings in Kunming, where there were 29 dead and more than 130 injured by what they are calling separatists from the western portion of China, namely Xinjiang, where it is a Muslim area of China, and that they've always had issues, so to speak, with Beijing. And the knife attacks are coming more frequent, and this is a big one here. And the Chinese government's trying to play it down as being just a few separatists, when actually there's a larger movement here, and there may be some influence from places like the West through Serbia, through some other channels into the western portions of China. And this is all fun and games for espionage. Both sides do it. They do it not just on the internet. They do it with movement of guns and weapons and monies, and that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting from there. Here's 5 killed in Changsha stabbing. And then I believe just yesterday there was another report coming out that a couple were stabbed too. I'm not sure what city it was in the north, but these stabbings are coming more frequent, and they're calling this kind of like a movement of the long knives, because guns are not allowed in China, yet there's plenty of knives. And if you notice, many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a huge problem in Xinjiang where they were using syringes. These syringes were contaminated, and they were stabbing these syringes into the Chinese military out there to, if not kill them, but infect them, because they want to be independent, and they're not getting a fair shake, and they're not being heard. And I have a feeling that basically that this will also come to the forefront with places like Tibet. Taiwan angry with a new trade agreement with Germany, and so they've voiced some concern, and they're not happy. Hong Kong has their issues with the mainland China, as well. The news about the MH370 flight, Malaysian Airlines, that apparently is either disappeared or gone down. They're not able to actually get any evidence to this fact, and there's many countries that are looking for the flight. Some suggest that there's some kind of connection with China, because so many Chinese were aboard this flight, and the family of these victims have gotten to the point where they're almost rioting. So what does the Chinese government do? They try to pacify them with money. And more times than not, if you throw money at Chinese nationals, usually that's enough to pacify them, no matter what type of situation it is. And I know that may sound cruel, but it is in case of fact. So we'll see what happens with this flight. We'll see if there's any connection to the high-tech professionals aboard. We'll see what really happened here eventually. But it's curious. It's a study in societies and cultures and how they handle something like this. And each country is a little bit different. Cartoon of the month, Make Your Move. You see several politicians from around the world, most notably Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin, on the grand chessboard that is world politics and world domination, control of markets. And they're all wondering what moves will be made next. What more mistakes could be made? Because whether it's G20, whether it's UN Council, whether it's any other kind of international meeting of the minds, so to speak, by the politicians of each country, you can be sure that they're not taking your best interest in mind. This release coming straight from the horse's mouth. Chinese Army will fight back against any provocation. This was reassured this month. At present, we cannot completely rule out the possibility of clashes in East Asia, but it is not decided by China, said Tian Lihua, a member of the National Committee of Chinese People's Political Conference. And they're talking about Japan, but that's not exclusively to Japan, because there's disputes with the Philippines, there's disputes with Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, and many other nations. So if you read between the lines, or you read literally what they're saying, it's basically that they don't want to be a paper tiger, and any provocation could start something that's far more serious than what we all want to get into. So just to reassure that the possibility of a regional war in Asia and a world war are so much closer than what people think. All it takes is one nation like the United States to actually want to get into a war, to mask some other problems, or to forward another agenda, and it can very easily be done. Because there's so much tension and there's so many disputes around the world. And by the way, China stands with Moscow, of course, when it comes to the problems in Ukraine. And they've made that very clear, although there will be no military aid or military intervention in Ukraine. That is so far out of their region that is not a possibility. But don't be so surprised if eventually the region of focus turns back to Asia again. from the Middle East and from Europe. So more to come on this, and the hotbed, I think, is really Asia when it comes right down to it. That Korean peninsula has not nothing's been resolved there, for many, many years, and eventually there has to be some resolution. How it comes to a resolution, no one can say. But remember, there's, I believe, over 20,000 U.S. troops that are stationed in Seoul, and that is right under fire, direct fire from the North Korean long guns. Now, you remember last month in February, the Chinese government cracked down on prostitution nationwide, most notably in the industrial city of Dongguan, where there appears to be more sex workers than any other urban region throughout China. And what they've done, though, effectively, is they've actually raised the prices of the services provided by the xiaojies, the sex workers in the city around Dongguan. A sex worker interview said that she had to raise her prices because of a greater risk of being shut down, and that minimum would be 1,000 yuan would get you all around service, whereas before the charge was much less. They have to pay more money in bribes to the local police and officials to keep their houses of ill repute open. So, effectively, what the Chinese government has done is they've created inflation in the sex trade. And as usual, any decision that these guys make ends up being something that actually raises the prices, and in some cases raises demand for the activity or the item or whatever it is they're trying to curb, such as a housing bubble. What do? They limited only one house per family. They made sure that you had a residence permit in the city that you were buying the house. They cracked down on developers selling houses to one family. And what did it do? It raised the price of houses. It created more demand. It created more problems. So government never helps things. They only help to mask the real problem, and in some cases increase demand, like the sex trade. So, God help us if the government ever gets involved in an area. And this month, China announces that they're going to concentrate more on air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution throughout the major industrial zones within China. Basically, what this means is that they're all in with the carbon tax myth, the global warming myth that most of the governments in the world have been pushing upon people that know better, that there is no such thing as man-made global warming. There is climate change, of course, but there's always been climate change, and there always will be, regardless of how many man or beast roam the earth. And putting carbon taxes on nations that are already struggling to feed its people and keep employment anywhere near sane levels is ridiculous. But they think they can do it. They think they can control, 1.4 billion people and get them to stop polluting, when you know darn well that if a manufacturing company can make more money and stay open and hire more people by polluting versus doing it clean, so to speak, they'll do it. They'll make money any way they can, and they'll probably pay the fine. So the government, again, getting involved in something that they're going to end up ruining. They're going to end up creating a black market in carbon credits, or they're going to end up with everybody paying a tax for pollution, and they're going to continue to pollute, because that's the only way that they can make money, is to manufacture goods and sell them as cheaply as possible. And so we'll see what happens going forward, but basically their commitment to anti-pollution is really more rhetoric. They'll build their green cities, they'll cut down on it somewhat, but they've got a military to build, they've got a nation, 1.4 billion people to feed, and they've just signed a huge energy deal with Russia, and they're going to try to pipe in as much natural gas and oil as possible. Those, in case you haven't already guessed, are dirty, burning fuels. And the more their military grows and the more cars they sell that are not electric, because they're not popular here at all, the more that China is going